Welcome to the Afterspin, opinions from thought leaders in our state. I want to ask Andy Taylor and Brad Crone, the state legislature in South Carolina is considering a measure to limit the number of terms a legislator can serve. We limit the number of terms and or the age of many public officials in the state. Is this something our state should consider, and what would be the benefits or the downsides to term limits? Brad?
Well, Tom, I think we have pretty effective term limits institution right now. It's called a 2-year term, and we have elections on those terms. And, you know, I don't think that it's necessarily fair if a legislator's not doing a good job. More than likely they're going to end up with a primary, and then they're going to end up with a general election. So I think the voters have the ability to determine the effectiveness of their legislators and put term limits on them if
even
they need
in
to.
These really obscenely gerrymandered districts.
Yeah, even in the gerrymandered districts. I'm a purist in the sense that I think the legislative process is the strongest body, institutional body in our state, and they deserve, I think, the past history that we've seen, whether it's 1982, for example, the 2-year term, a constitutional amendment. They wanted to extend the terms to 4 years, soundly defeated, almost 2-1, 64-36. The voters in North Carolina are pretty smart.
Andy, about 20%, 20 to 25% of the legislature turns over every 2 years anyway, doesn't it? What do you think of this?
Which was Brad's point. I kind of agree with Brad. We have a problem with expertise in the General Assembly as it is. You're not going to incentivize members to invest a lot of time understanding issues if they know they're going to be out within a certain time period. Moreover, we're having problems. We talked about competitive primaries here, but you generally have problems recruiting candidates, and again, that's going to be turning them off if they realize that they can't really spend a lot of time, invest a lot of time in the General Assembly. And I think it would upset sort of balance of power in Raleigh. Within the General Assembly, it would give more power to staff. Yes. And away from members, and in the sort of system of separation of powers, it will give greater authority to the executive branch. So I tend to agree with Brad.
So let's play what if. Let's play what if. What if we did increase legislative terms to 4 years and then limited the number of terms a legislator could serve?
Well, I think that may be an option. If you do that, I think you need to have the discussion of having a full-time legislature with a professional staff.
We pretty darn well do now.
We do, but we're still having part-time salaries.
Yeah.
So we need to make sure that the salary structure is commensurate with the amount of time they're having to spend in their service.
And I'm not a big advocate.
We tie legislative pay raises to the same pay raises they give the other state employees.
Well, I'm not a big advocate of spending a lot of money on government, but we could do that and actually decrease the size of particularly the House, but also the Senate. If you're worried about increasing costs. Maybe we could even have a unicameral legislature. This is something that hasn't been seriously talked about in North Carolina, but the roles are duplicative of both bodies. So maybe shrink the size of General Assembly, even if you keep it as bicameral, and increase the pay that members have.
Well, we're going to get some mail on this one.
Absolutely. The doc was correct on the institutional knowledge. There are two people that come to mind, Jim Crawford and Nelson Dollar, the last two appropriations chairmen on the House side. Clearly, those two men have more institutional knowledge of the state budget at the legislative level than anybody in the state.
But I think about Nelson Dollar, for instance, on health care. He is sort of the go-to guy in the House on health care.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So if you put a false mandate in there on term limits, you lose that working knowledge.
Andy, you made a really good point that I don't think I've ever heard articulated before, but I agree with, and that is, why should I run to get elected and invest time becoming an expert on health care or whatever if I can't serve but a few years?
Right. And we haven't enough of a problem. I mean, there are some, Brad just mentioned some really knowledgeable quality members, but I mean, without pointing fingers, I think many of us could think of a number of members who really, they're making decisions on a more than $20 billion a year enterprise, and they don't really know a lot of what's going on or a lot of the issues. And if we have term limits, you're going to have even more amateurish members.
We're going to have to get you back, and we'll talk about that some more, because I think there are a lot of people that would agree with you. Well, thanks for watching the After Spin. We'll have more video all during the week on ncspin.com.